Anthony, but as strictly a quarterback in the NFL, and especially as the number one pick, he's been underwhelming. He's been a flash in the pan, a guy that showed flashes of potential, showed flashes of true greatness. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Durag D, and I'm back at it again with another video, man. Thanks for joining me on Dudes in Love with Football, the DILF podcast, man. Today we got a juicy one for you. We got about 14 or so players that I believe are on the hot seat this year, and they really need to perform. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Send it to your friends so you never miss an episode. Speaking of episodes, man, the next one's going to be real juicy. I can't wait. I'll tell you about that one later. But I'm not going to waste any more of your time. And let's get right into number one. I think everybody knows about this one. That's Anthony Richardson, and kind of by osmosis, if you will, by association, Shane Steichen, the head coach as well. Now, Anthony Richardson is a guy who he still has sky-high limits. He's a guy that was picked 4th overall, obviously, in that C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young draft. Will Anderson went right in front of him as well. He's a guy that was supposed to change the franchise. He came in after the Colts had a brutal season where they started Matt Ryan and they started Sam Ehlinger. It got really bad in Indy, man. I remember that year because the Commanders played them, and Terry Moss, Stephon Gilmore for a game-winning touchdown, basically. And it was just a really weird year for them. They ended up getting the 4th pick in the draft, and they had this super freak athlete at quarterback who obviously had accuracy problems at Florida, and they took the chance on him. And, Shane Steichen, former offensive coordinator for the Eagles, kind of got Jalen Hurts' career, blossoming as it has. Say what you want about him. That year he had with Shane Steichen, he was runner-up in MVP. He was second-team All-Pro, so you can't take that away from him. But getting back to Anthony Richardson, he has really struggled in the NFL. His accuracy problems have followed him to the league, and it's something that he hasn't been able to shake thus far. Now, I do want to cut him some slack. He's dealt with some injuries. Obviously, his first year, I think he only played like 4 games before he suffered a season-ending injury, and then he comes back this year, and maybe he was still banged up a little bit. Maybe, obviously, he didn't play a lot at Florida. He didn't, play a ton his first year. And so this year, it's kind of like he's still new to the game, you know what I mean? So for him, he's really struggled. And I don't think that the GM has really done him any favors because they've had a solid offensive line, one of the better ones when he first, his last year, but it's kind of degrading. Some players retiring, some players regressing. And I don't think they've got him any elite weapons on the perimeter either. Jonathan Taylor, although he isn't his, 2021 self, he's still one of the better backs in the NFL. He finished top 5 in yards this past year, so he's absolutely a threat out of the backfield. But I don't think they have a wide receiver 1 on roster, and I think that's not going to bode well for Anthony Richardson, who already has a finger injury, a dislocated pinky. They brought in Daniel Jones, so it's really not looking well for him. And this is the ripple effect of what could happen. These are their future free agents coming up in the next couple of years. It's legitimately almost their entire team. It's Alec Pierce after this upcoming season, who I think is the most underrated receiver in the NFL, bar none. And then that following season, Michael Pittman is a free agent. Jonathan Taylor is a free agent. Quentin Nelson is a free agent. DeForest Buckner is a free agent. Grover Stewart is a free agent. Josh Downs is a free agent. So it's like 8 of their top 10 players are all free agents Pierce after this season coming up, and then those other players after the 2026-2027 season, if they finish middle of the pack again, because I will give them credit. The weird thing is they were actually a better offense with Gardner Minshew than they were Anthony Richardson. So it's just really odd to me that with obviously more talented quarterback that they've actually regressed, because they were 7th in points per game in the season that Anthony Richardson got injured, only played 4 games, and then they regressed to 16th when he played most of this season. So it's kind of a weird situation right now in Indy, and I'm rooting for Anthony Richardson because I do have a share or 2 of him in Dynasty Superflex, so I need him to perform personally, you know what I mean? So I'm rooting for the guy. They have barely missed the playoffs in terms of wins, but I truly believe with all those free agents that are coming up, they really can't afford to bring all those guys back, obviously, and if they have another mid-season where they miss out on all the top quarterbacks, they might just hit the reset button and say, you know what, we're blowing it up. We're going to lose all these free agents. We'll trade a couple of these guys away. We'll have a ton of cap space. We'll sign guys. We'll draft a bunch of rookies. And then we'll see what we can do in 2027, 2028. And that could be where they're headed, because right now they're winning now, but I don't see them winning their division. I don't see them winning in the playoffs. So I think that's honestly where they're headed, unfortunately, if AR can't get it together. Now, moving on into number two, the number two quarterback and head coach by osmosis, if you will. Now, that's Kyler Murray, and by osmosis, Jonathan Gannon. Honestly, I'm going to cut Jonathan Gannon some slack. We'll get into him first, honestly. They went from, when he got there his first year, they were second to last in points per game, giving up at 26.8. Dead last was my Commanders at 30.1. You know what I mean? We were horrible on defense, but they were second to last. And this past year, I mean, they really did improve. They improved to 16th. So, they were middle of the pack, nothing special or anything like that. But 22 points per game, like legitimately middle of the pack, you can win with that. So I'm going to cut him some slack. It was only his second year. His first year, Kyler was coming off ACL injury. So cutting him a little slack. It's just unfortunate that in this league, it's all about quarterbacks. And speaking of quarterbacks, let's just go ahead and get to Kyler Murray, man. I'm a huge fan of Kyler in terms of the athlete that he is. I don't think people give him the proper credit he deserves as a pure athlete, what he's been able to accomplish. Being the number one overall pick in the NFL and being the 7th overall pick in MLB baseball is accomplished that we may never see again, honestly, especially a guy of his stature, being only 5 foot, whatever he is. I don't know what he is, but it's just astonishing, truly, what he's been able to accomplish as an athlete. But as strictly a quarterback in the NFL, and especially as the number one pick, he's been underwhelming. He's been a flash in the pan, a guy that showed flashes of potential, showed flashes of true greatness, and then unfortunately got injured towards ACL, and he really hasn't looked the same since. Now, Kyler's just been a guy, he hasn't been able to win. He's only got one season where he's over 500 as a starter. That was his best season in 2021, where he was at 50 rush yards per game. That was when he really flashed that rushing upside, had about 850 rushing yards. Every other season outside of that, it's only been like 30 rush yards per game, which, is solid. That equates to about 500 yards per season. But, if he's going to be, he's too talented not to be as consistent as he should be. He is very inconsistent. And I think that's his problem. He's never thrown for 4,000 yards, and he's never had over 26 passing touchdowns either. And he's had a lot of talent around him. We're talking prime D-Hop. We're talking Hollywood Brown, who was a 1,000-yard receiver. We're talking Christian Kirk, who went to Jacksonville and was a 1,000-yard receiver. We're talking James Conner, who's, a solid RB1. And now we're talking Trey McBride, one of the best tight ends in the league, and a young Marvin Harrison Jr., who should be blossoming into a superstar if he had a quarterback. And it's just tough to really rank Kyler Murray amongst quarterbacks, because if we're going strictly talent, he's top 10, no question about it. But he just doesn't produce. And you know me, production is the most important thing at the end of the day. I will take the least talented guy if he leads me to wins over a flashy, super talented guy that chokes in the fourth quarter or breaks down at the end of the season and every year gets off to a hot start and then fizzles out. Give me production, give me wins, and he's got 0 in the playoffs. So it's hard for me to see him turn it around. But he is under contract through 2029. They give him a huge contract. So they might be stuck with this guy if they can't find a trade partner. But I could see him being up out of there, being somewhere like Vegas, being somewhere like, I don't know, insert QB needy team here with an old veteran or hey, LA, the Rams. You never know. So Kyler needs to show us something. He's got the weapons. There's no excuses. Their defense is improving. It's time for them to win. Their division is kind of wide open. It's the Rams and Niners are, kind of question mark, but they need to put up more wins, and he needs to do it in January in the playoffs. Now, moving on to another guy that needs to win more in January in the playoffs, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence this is the funny thing about Trevor Lawrence, bro. When I was researching for this video, I went on, I think it was like Football Reference or something like that, and they have his nickname as the Prince Who Was Promised. That is crazy glaze, bro. The Prince Who Was Promised. That's like LeBron James level glaze, bro. And he has not nearly lived up to the hype, to the money that he's making. He's got one playoff win in his first 5 seasons, and now he's been banged up the last couple of years. And he's another guy that's had plenty of talent around him. If he's the Prince Who Was Promised, than Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne, Evan Ingram, Gabe Davis. I mean, now he's got De'Ami Brown, who, I like De'Ami Brown, but, maybe he's actually not as good as I think he is. Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter, are they even got Bashaw Tootin? Like, bro, he's about to mess around and be the third best quarterback in that division real soon, maybe dead last. The Colts end up getting a high pick. Somehow, pie in the sky, 2027, they get Arch Manning. He turns out to actually be who Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be, and Cam Ward ends up being better. I already think CJ Stroud's better than Trevor Lawrence right here, right now. You might wake up in 3 years if you're a Jags fan and say, wow, we really have the worst QB in the division. So this guy really needs to get it together and prove that he's worth the money he's making and prove that he was worth anywhere near the hype that he was getting pre-draft. Now, moving on to his running back, Travis Etienne. He's been another guy that's been an absolute disappointment. He was a first-round pick, and we know running backs have not historically gone in the first round recently because, dime a dozen, their value was suppressed for sure. And he was a guy that was a first-round pick, came in the league. He was one of the best ACC running backs we've ever seen. And he came in with decent expectations. They had James Robinson at the time, so he was kind of like the third down back, the scat back, the change of pace guy. And he had a solid rookie year. He went over 1,000 yards. He went over 1,400 all-purpose yards. And then his second season, he went over 1,500 yards. So 2 pretty good seasons after, mind you, missing his entire first season with a broken foot that he had to get surgery on. And he came back, like I said, 1,400, 1,500 to all total yards. And then this past season, I don't know what happened to Travis Etienne. I truly don't. Like I said, he was really good. He was a second-round pick going in fantasy. I remember he was going late second. People were hammering the draft button on him because he was getting a lot of volume. And then this past year, he was just the definition of awful. He was really, really bad. I mean, he went from 5 yards a carry to 3.8 to 3.7 this past year, and it was really bad. Like, I understand he was banged up a little bit, but still, I mean, Tank Bigsby was outperforming him behind that same offensive line, and Tank Bigsby was also banged up. So Travis Etienne's a guy who he's a free agent after this season. So, I mean, he could be gone. They already drafted Tootin, obviously, this past year. They brought in Bigsby, who was better than him this past year. And Bigsby's nothing crazy special either. So, and I'm a Bashaw Tootin fan, though. I think Bashaw Tootin could flat out win the job and be just as good if he could hang on to the football. Travis Etienne might not be in Jacksonville after the season. It's probably his last year in Jacksonville. Now, next is a guy who I don't know if he's going to finish his career with the team he's on either, and that's DJ Moore. Now, he's been in the league for 7 years, and he's had 4,000-yard seasons, and one of those seasons he got injured, so he probably would have had 1,000 if he stayed healthy. But this isn't even off of his play necessarily. He didn't have 1,000 yards last year, but the offense itself wasn't very good. But this is just the things that are happening around him tell me, they give me red flag signals that they're looking to either move on or they don't believe that he's enough. Because right out the gate, when he got there, they traded for him, and then they draft Rome Odunze 10th overall the year after. And then this past year, you know what, that wasn't enough. We'll get Luther Burden, and we'll get Colson Loveland. Like, they are building a lot at that perimeter spot with the receivers and even at the pass-catching tight end spot. So it is absolutely hard for me to believe that they believe in DJ Moore because, they flooded the perimeter with talent. And he's also been on film showing poor talent, stopping short on his routes, running out of bounds, throwing, I won't say hissy fits, but little diva fits when he's not getting targets, and maybe that was just because the offense was bad. Maybe with Ben Johnson coming in, if the offense is better, if they're winning more than 5 games, because he was there with Fields, they weren't winning. And then he had Tyson Bagent after Fields got hurt, then they really weren't winning. And then he probably gets Caleb and he thinks, oh, bro, we're about to actually start winning. And they win 5 games. So, yeah, I'd probably be upset too. I'm not blaming him necessarily, but, you got to be professional, obviously. And he got called out in the media. He got called out by the team. And there's this negative narrative around a few plays that he made last season. So I don't know if he's necessarily going to finish his career in Chicago. There have been rumors he's on the trading block multiple times. So he's a guy that he might be out of there as well because he doesn't quite fit the timeline as well with Caleb going into his second year with Rome Odunze and then them drafting these 2 rookies on the offense. it seems like they really want to go with the youth movement. And although DJ Moore isn't old, he isn't as young as those guys, obviously. Now, moving on into Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson is a guy I have honestly never believed in. I always thought he was not overrated because no one ever thought this guy was, a top running back or anything like that. No one was that crazy, but he could be on his way out as well. Last year was obviously the worst of his career. He actually had a solid year his second year, got a contract extension. He's under contract through 2029. So, I mean, he should be there for a fat minute. He's got 1,000-yard season where he went over 1,500 yards total in 2022, and where he averaged 5 yards a carry. But ever since then, he's never been over 4 yards a carry since. He's been 4 yards a carry and under every year since then. And coupled that with a league leading 7 fumbles last year, it's really tough. And they've obviously invested in the running back position as well. They got Antonio Gibson from Washington, who some people were, happy about. They thought this guy was going to come in and actually be solid. And I was screaming from the mountaintops, no, he's not that guy. You're going to be disappointed. And he was just depth, and he has his own fumbling problems. Don't even get me started. And so Ramondre was kind of forced to be the workhorse back because I don't know if you guys recall, he was benched, quote unquote, for Antonio Gibson, where he did not start a game this past season because of his fumbling problems. He's had 14 fumbles in his career, and 7 of them were last year. So he's really got to get that fumbling problem. And we haven't even gotten to Travion Henderson, who they just drafted in the second round, who's an excellent pass protector. He's an excellent pass catcher. I mean, he's a guy that can carve a big, big role, and he's obviously much, much more explosive than Ramondre Stevenson, who's probably honestly below average in that category when it comes to just being explosive. So Ramondre might be up out of there too. I don't know if he's a guy that people would necessarily trade for, but it's hard for me to believe that they're going to keep him through 2029, especially with Travion Henderson, who should be an absolute stud, and with Drake May, who can rush in his own right. So it's just hard for me to believe he's going to be there long term with his fumbling problems, with his lack of efficiency. He was banged up a little bit, but he's never really been an explosive guy. He's never been super efficient. I think that 5 yards to carry was honestly a fluke. Now, moving on into the next guy, I got George Pickens, and he's on the hot seat, not even because of his play, but just because of up here. His mental and his attitude, or I guess lack thereof, is the reason he's in Dallas. Because if he was, I don't want to say a model citizen, but if he was more in control of his emotions, if he didn't have all the narratives that, he's NFL young boy, he'll slap you in the face and fight you and get flags and yank you by your face mask for no good reason, blah, blah, blah. If he didn't have that reputation, I believe the Steelers would have, kept him on roster. I don't know if they would have paid him DK Metcalf money, but they would have at least kept him on rosters. If his mental hasn't improved at all, it's only going to be worse in Dallas because obviously they're much more publicized than any other team in the NFL. They garner more attention than any team in the NFL. They're more valuable than any team in the world. And he's going to be seen no matter what he does in practice, in interviews, on the field. He's not going to get away with anything on the sidelines. So he better be on his P's and Q's this year because Dallas is cap strapped. They still got to pay Micah. Deron Bland is a free agent after this year. So they are cap strapped. They have no money to give out. And if he wants to stay in Dallas, he's likely going to have to take a discount. And guess what? He's not homegrown. He's not an Ezekiel Elliott. He's not a CeeDee Lamb. He's not a Dak Prescott that has built a relationship with Jerry and has worn that star on his helmet for 3, 4, 5 years with Jerry, sat down with him, had dinners with him, all that type of good stuff. So he's a guy that's got 1 year to prove it, or he is up out of there. And he could be a guy that's going from, if he has a good year, he could go and get 30 million. He truly can. But if he has a terrible year, or maybe he gets banged up, or he has some hothead moments, or he cost him in the playoffs with a hothead moment, he could be a guy that's getting 30 million over 3-4 years to a guy on another 1 year prove-it deal. So he's got to be on his P's and Q's. He's got to ball out. And honestly, I think he will. As much as I've been a hater of him, I think this year he's about to hoop, bro. I'm not going to lie. Now, next, we got another guy I'm a huge fan of, bro. He's got all the talent in the world, and that's Breece Hall. Breece Hall has all the talent in the world. I swear to everything I love, bro. Last year, This time last year, I was saying he was like a top 5, top 6 back in the NFL in terms of talent. And I still think it's there. I truly do, but the production isn't there. Can you believe this man has never had a 1,000-yard rushing season? That's crazy for the amount of talent that he has. And I do understand, obviously, he tore his ACL his rookie year. He looked like he was on an absolute tear. He was averaging almost 100 total yards per game. He was super involved in the passing game. So he was a guy that was literally the whole offense when he first came in the league. But ever since then, he just really hasn't been the same. He's, like I said, he's never topped 1,000 yards. He's a guy that he did finish 7th in comeback player of the year voting, not this past year, but 2023, because, he came back from that ACL injury and he caught a bunch of dump off passes and put up some decent stats. Not 1,000 yards rushing, but his total yards is always solid because he's hugely involved in the passing game. Now, this past year, they tried to kind of supplement him with Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen came in and took some carries, and Breece Hall still was second in the NFL with 6 fumbles. So he kind of had some slippery hands this past year. So that's a concern going forward because it's kind of with running backs and with fumbles. It's like once you get one, it just like guys like, oh man, he's a guy you can get it out, So they're coming for you, and you really have to be on your P's and Q's and be ball security high and tight. And six is a lot for an NFL running back. It's a lot, and the Jets offense did him no favors, but Breece Hall's another guy. He's a free agent after this year, so he can find his way. And the Jets have been they just paid Garrett Wilson a ton of money. They just gave Sauce Gardner a ton of money. So they've proved that if you perform, they will give you a contract. But unfortunately, Breece Hall has not been able to prove to the Jets that he deserves that contract. And honestly, I don't blame them. I really don't. So he's not even under contract after this year. He might get into some contract fiasco, end up franchise tag, something like that. So he could end up in another uniform next year, which is honestly what I predict. I would not mind whatsoever if my Commanders would out and sign Breece Hall this free agency. Now moving on, we got a guy that I will honestly probably die on the hill for in fantasy, but IRL in real life, there's no way that I can defend Kyle Pitts anymore. Kyle Pitts is a guy, he came out guns blazing with Matt Ryan. He came out and had 1,000 yards as a rookie, and everybody was going goo goo gaga. And we thought he was the next Travis Kelce or George Kittle or name elite long-time longevity tight end here. We thought he was going to change the position. He was he still is, honestly, an absolute mismatch. Too fast, much too fast for linebackers, much too big for corners and safeties, and some linebackers too. Because guy's 6'5", he runs a 4.4, and he's athletic as all get out, and he's a tight end. He's honestly a big wide receiver, and that's the thing with him is that if he's not providing you anything in the receiving game, he gives you nothing because he's not a blocker. It's kind of like in the NBA, an elite scorer. If you're not giving me buckets, what are you doing? Because you're not playing defense. You're not like a small guard. If you're not giving me a bunch of points, then what are you really doing for me? So I just don't get it with Pitts. I still think he's a top 4 talent. You can't tell me that there's 4 tight ends in the NFL, pass catching wise, better than Kyle Pitts. I think it's Bowers. I think it's Kittle. Then you can maybe fit one more name in there, and then it's Kyle Pitts. I truly believe that. But this is his year, man, because he hasn't gotten a contract yet. They're obviously going to pay Drake London. You know how I feel about Michael Penix. I love me some Michael Penix, and he's going to be a gunslinger this year. I believe this offense is going to be better than it was last year. So Pitts has no excuses. They're raving about him in camp right now. He's healthy. He's got the best quarterback of his career. No excuses. Kyle Pitts, we're rooting for you. We want to see you be elite once again. And Darnell Mooney's banged up right now. So you can be the number 2 target in this offense if you just step up. There's no more Jonnu Smith. There's no more Arthur Smith. There's no more excuses at all whatsoever for Kyle Pitts. This is the year he gets it done. And that's why I'm honestly taking him everywhere in fantasy, because the fantasy community has 100% given up on the guy. He's going stupid late, not even drafted in some redraft leagues, 10, 12 leaguers. So I think he's going to be a waiver wire pickup that everyone's like, oh, he just took some time, whoop-de-whoop, whatever. But I think this is the year for Kyle Pitts. It's all coming together for him. He's a guy that I actually believe will bounce back. And I don't know if the Falcons will give him some type of contract. I don't know what tight ends are making these days, but he's a guy that I think bounces back, and wherever he ends up, he's going to be a nice pickup. Wouldn't mind my Commanders picking him up as well. There were actually trade talks before the season about Washington and Kyle Pitts. We were inquiring about Kyle Pitts. So I don't know if he was on the block. I don't know if we were just doing our due diligence because, we're out here calling the Texans about Laramie Tunsil, and no one knew that was going on. So Adam Peters is out there working the phones with everybody, and that's why we're about to go to the ball. And they're working the phones with everybody but Terry. But moving on to the next guy, man, it's got to be Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll is a guy who he was deemed an offensive genius when he was in Buffalo with the Bills. He saved Josh Allen's career, but it kind of looks like Josh Allen got Brian Daboll a career at this point. You know what I mean? Because Josh Allen is still hooping. Josh Allen is the reigning MVP of the NFL, and Brian Daboll is maybe in his last year in New York already. So I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit up here and act like he's been done any favors. He's had Daniel Jones at quarterback. And we all know in the NFL, if you don't have a quarterback, you got nothing. He had Daniel Jones, and now he's got, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart. And he's really had no weapons since he's been there. He had Saquon for a little bit, but nothing on the perimeter. Now he's got a young Neighbors, but he hasn't really had, anything elite on the outside. They tried Kenny Galladay. That was an absolute flop of a failure, of a bust, of a what are we doing? And then Darren Waller was a Mayday, like, what are we doing? And at the time, I didn't like either one of those signings at the time, especially Kenny Galladay. There were rumors Washington was in on him. I was like, please, for the heavens, for the Lord Jesus Christ, no. Because that literally had Dan Snyder written all over at the time. But anyway, the Giants just haven't done Brian Daboll any favors. And, the GM not doing him any favors whatsoever, letting Saquon go, paying Daniel Jones all this crazy money, and then trading him, cutting him a year later. Like, it's dark times in Giantsville right now. But honestly, their defense, I think, will be solid this year. That might be their calling card. But I've looked at their schedule, and it is absolutely beyond. Giants' schedule is Commanders, Cowboys, Chiefs, Chargers, Saints, Eagles, Broncos, Eagles again. And that's their first 9 games. And then they go Bears, Packers, Lions. Right after that, that's their first 12 games. So it's going to be a tough season for the Giants. I'm not going to lie. I know I said that I had Russell Wilson, having them 500 through the first, halfway through the season. I retract that 100% after looking at their schedule, bro. It's going to be tough. And Brian Daboll, I'm going to be honest, with that type of schedule, he might be lucky to make it to the end of the season, because those first 12 games, I could legitimately see them being 3-9. Through those first 9 games, I could see them being 2-7, 1-8. So they are a team that needs to win every game they can, because Brian Daboll's job is on the line. Another guy whose job may not be on the line, but fans have been clamoring a little bit, and so has even outside media, and that's Mike Tomlin. The Steelers are an organization that you think winning, you think tradition, you think all that good stuff, good organization, all that. And that's true. They are a good organization, but they haven't won a playoff game since 2016. And it's almost 2026. So it's been almost a decade for these guys. And they've had a lot of talent on the offense and the defensive side. They obviously had an old Big Ben, and they had Pickett, and they had Fields, and then Russ, and now it's Rodgers. But it's hard for me to believe that this team is going to do anything playoff-wise. It's hard for me to believe that they're going to do anything to make Mike Tomlin feel more comfortable, to put any of those hot seat media at take. You know what I mean? There's nothing that Aaron Rodgers or this team can do. And I like Mike Tomlin. I think Mike Tomlin is a Hall of Fame coach. I think he's a guy that gets the most out of his players, but he has lost the locker room at times. Obviously, we saw what happened with Antonio Brown. But he's just a whole nutcase. He's just different. We'll throw that out. No one can control him. But we saw what happened with Deontay Johnson. Obviously, we saw what happened with George Pickens. So it's kind of weird that receivers that they get just kind of flip out. We also saw what happened with Chase Claypool. So it's kind of weird over there with receivers recently. Juju as well. Now he wasn't like a bad teammate or anything like that. He just fizzled out and was doing TikToks and weird stuff. But Mike Tomlin's a guy who he will lose the locker room if there's, good players that are missing meetings, skipping practices, doing whatever they can to be a nuisance on the team and be a cancer. He really won't do anything. And he's a guy that knows he's getting on the hot seat these days, and he can't afford to lose anymore. And that's why they keep going out and getting these veteran quarterbacks, getting guys that they know can just keep them afloat because they don't want a losing season. Mike Tomlin's never had one. And I think they're too proud of a franchise to pick 1, 2, 3 overall and draft a quarterback. They're much too proud. They don't want to lose 12, 13, 14 games and put their fans, because they got some of the most loyal fans in the NFL. They don't want to put those fans through 3-win, 4-win seasons. That's just not in the Steelers' blood. I would honestly wonder, now I'm curious how many times they've ever won like 3 or less games, because that's something I don't think I've ever seen the Steelers do. Now, the next guy just played for the Steelers, and that's Justin Fields. I've been a Justin Fields fan ever since he was at Ohio State. When he was being drafted and the Giants had the pick and they announced that it was a trade, I was going bananas because the Commanders were at 19 and I was praying to the Lord heavens that it was us moving up for Fields. Thank God we didn't, because it ended up in us getting Jay Daniels. But I wanted Fields very badly. I still think he has all the talent in the world. I just think mentally he doesn't have it for whatever reason. He's a first read guy. If his first read isn't there, he's dumping it off to the running back or he's taking off. And that's been him his whole career. And that's why, if you got a good defense and a good running game, he can honestly win you some games because he's a super freak athlete. We've seen him go for over 1,100 rushing yards as a quarterback is nuts. And the Bears did him no favors. He's another guy that really didn't have any weapons on the perimeter. He had Darnell Mooney for, his first couple years. And then they honestly got him DJ Moore. And he and DJ Moore had a great connection. He had over 1,300 yards. And that's with 4 games of Tyson Bagent because Justin Fields got hurt. I believe DJ Moore would have went for 1,500 yards that season. I truly believe that. So Justin Fields is a guy. He's on his last legs. He's got his guy Garrett Wilson now. He's got Breece Hall. So, I mean, it should be better. It's better talent than he had in Chicago, honestly. They fortified the offensive line. They drafted Armin Mimbu. They drafted Oli Fashanu in these past 2 drafts. So they're trying on the offensive line. Problem is they have no one to speak of outside of Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. There's legitimately no one. Mason Taylor just sprained his ankle. I mean, so he was legitimately maybe their number 2 target. And now he's hurt. So Fields is a guy, he's never thrown for more than 2,500 yards, never had more than 17 passing touchdowns. And with his style, he's prone to getting banged up. And it's just sad to see, guys like him and Richardson and Kyler. A lot of these guys are rushing quarterbacks that we thought, especially with Fields and Richardson, there were accuracy question marks. With Kyler, he has an arm. He is accurate. I don't know. It's just consistency with him. But with the other 2, they haven't developed as a passer. And it makes me wonder if going down the line, what they're going to do with this prototype of quarterback, with this super high upside, athletic freak that isn't the best passer. With Lamar, he fell all the way to the end of the first round. But AR went 4th overall and Fields went 11, maybe because of Lamar. Maybe Lamar paved the way for these guys, and they might mess around and ruin it for generations to come. Now, the last guy on the list I got is a guy I love, man. I truly do want to see this man succeed so bad. That's Mike McDaniel. I want to see, I love me some Tua. Tyreek on the football field, I'm a fan of. Off the field, you got me. Oh, the whoop-de-woo he's into, I'll pass. I like me some Jalen Waddle. I think he's slightly overrated, but I do like me some Jalen Waddle. I love me some Devon A-Chain. We've seen this offense be the best in the NFL. We've seen them put up 70 points. We've seen them go absolutely nuclear on teams, put up high-octane numbers, but it hasn't really produced any wins. It hasn't produced anything you can brag about, or definitely any playoff wins. And what's weird is the Dolphins have notoriously never been able to play in the cold, but they can't win their division because it was always the Patriots. And now it's going to be the Bills for the next whoever knows how many years it's going to be that the Bills win this division over and over and over again with Josh Allen. He might pull a Tom Brady and win this division 18 out of the next 20 years. But Mike McDaniel, and the problem is their defense is not very good. It's not very good at all. They have no corner depth to speak of whatsoever. They got an okay pass rush maybe, but I don't know. It's going to be tough with an aging Tyreek Hill, a Jalen Waddle who has regressed, an A-Chain who's, small and has an injury history, went on IR as a rookie, can get banged up, and questionable depth behind him with Jalen Wright and Ollie Gordon. Man, it's hard for me to see this team getting back to that prime 1,700 yards from Tyreek 1,400 yards from Jalen Waddle, getting Raheem Mostert to go for 20 touchdowns. I don't think we're seeing that ever again. But can he get this offense to be good enough to win a playoff game? Can he get this offense to be good enough to be relevant? Can he get this offense to be good enough to save his job? Is honestly what he needs to be thinking about. And honestly, I don't know if the answer is yes, unfortunately. I think he might be a Cliff Kingsbury type that gets an opportunity, and then unfortunately he's gonna have to go be either a head coach in college or an OC in college or an OC in the NFL, like Cliff is right now. Just focus on offense and work your way back up, because Cliff could have got a job if he wanted it after this past season. And you bet your butt he'll get a job after this year if he wants it, no question about it. He'll likely be the hottest name on the market. He'll probably have his pickings of any job that becomes available. So Mike McDaniel gets fired. If Cliff Kingsbury wants a job, he'll get his job 100%, because what he's done with Jaden Daniels has been magical, and anyone would be blessed to have him tutor their young quarterback 100%. After what I've seen from this man, I thought he was overrated myself. But what I've seen from the play calling, it's absolutely excellent. What he does in the run game is crazy. I mean, I literally saw this man call a flea flicker into a screen. It was insane. Austin Eckler takes the handoff, flips it back to Jaden Daniels, and then goes into the flat. Jaden Daniels throws him a screen against the Ravens. It was wild. I was like, bro, I've never seen a flea flicker screen in my life, but his play calling was wizard-like. So, and that's what we thought Mike McDaniel was, and that's what he needs to get back to. So if he can't, it might be GG's, man. He's as cool as a cucumber, but he might be done in Miami. So those are my 14 guys. Honestly, there's more guys, so I might honestly do a part 2 of this. Now, I said I would let you know what the next video is going to be. It's going to be an absolutely juicy one, man. We're going to talk about the core 4 quarterbacks. That's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, the unanimous top 4 in the NFL, whatever order you want to put them in. And then we're going to talk about the next up guys, man, the guys who could make that a core 5, the guys who could break that core 4, who can do it and what do they have to do it. And we're also going to go over who's second. You know what I mean? Is it Josh Allen? Is it Lamar? Is it Joe Burrow? We're going to make a case for all 3 of them. And then we're going to go down the list of who could break that core 4, man. You don't want to miss that one. That one's going to be a banger. I'm so excited to bring you guys that one. I'm your host, D-Rag D. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.